Well, one of the most debated picks of the draft was the Cardinals taking running back Jeremiyah Love at number 3 overall. So he gets 4 years, $52.5 fully guaranteed $1 million. And that got our Peter Schrager asking Love's new head coach this question.
I'm not sure if you watch a lot of Get Up and NFL Live, but we had many debates about the value of taking a running back 3rd overall with the value in free agency and, of course, the salary cap. Did those conversations come up at all as far as the position and the value you can get with other positions that are at premium prices?
Yeah, we had those conversations, but, like I said, we wanted to take who we thought was the best player at that spot, and it was a consensus for us to take this guy because, again, we know the player, and then you pair that with the person, and the position really didn't matter to us at that point.
First off, that's a good job getting the show in there. I like that a lot.
Peter Schrager.
I like that a lot. That really is the question, because do you take the best player available in the draft, which I believe almost everyone at that point thought he was, regardless of the fact that he plays the position that A, probably isn't going to help you win games quickly, and B, doesn't make salary allotment. What did you think of it, Dan?
Cardinals did the right thing. In 2021, the NFL cap space was $183 million. In 2026, it will be $301. If Jeremiyah Love is the player that the Cardinals and many of us expect him to be, by the end of his rookie contract, that will be an enormous bargain with the way that the cap space is going. Enormous bargain. 5 years, that's a 65% increase in 5 years in NFL cap space. If he's the guy that they expect him to be, he will be an enormous bargain.
You like it or didn't like it, D. Wood?
It's not the way to build a team. It's just not. Here's the Cardinals running back room. Tyler Algier that they paid from the Atlanta Falcons.
Right.
James Conner is coming back from injury. They drafted Trey Benson in the 3rd round in 2024. And now you add Jeremiyah Love to a already kind of stacked up running back room.
$25 million already paid to the running back position before the draft.
How do you build it? Does this make the Cardinals get them any closer in the NFC West?
Let me ask you this. In 2 weeks or 3 weeks when the NFL drops its season and the schedule release, were you caring about what the Cardinals' first couple games
Should that
were?
matter, Dan?
When you're the Cardinals, and we're not talking about just a name because he played running back at Notre Dame. We're talking about a guy who's a very good player and should be a very good pro. So, no, it shouldn't be the most important thing that matters, but it should be a thing that for the Cardinals, you're sitting there going, we finally have a person that at least brings some notoriety to us, just like Travis Hunter did to the Jaguars last year when they.
I will say this in defense of the Cardinals. He's the first player that gives them some notoriety since Larry Fitzgerald.
Yeah.
Like they've literally figuratively
or Kyler
yes, they've been out in the desert.
Yeah.
Like they've been out in the desert. They at least have someone now that, let me tune in to watch this guy.
It's interesting, though. The Jaguars turned everything around and got almost nothing out of Travis Hunter.
But we were talking about him. We were
interested in them. But we're talking about him. It stops when the season starts.
Yeah,
I hear what you're saying.
I would say this. It's also opportunity cost. So speaking of people around the league, the reason you can justify Jeremiyah Love 3rd in the 2026 draft is because he didn't pass on Orlando Pace or Jonathan Ogden, or you didn't pass on Myles Garrett or Aiden Hutchinson. Now that the draft is over, I can call it like it is. We were talking about it, and candidly, we were promoting it. There wasn't that blue chip superstar future Hall of Famer in this draft besides Jeremiyah Love. So as much as Arvell Reese and David Bailey might end up being great pros, as prospects, they weren't in that conversation. So the opportunity cost, you're not missing on one of these once-in-a-generation players at a different position.
And we've had the conversation in regards to Love in the Cardinals, so much black and white in the vacuum. That's not this situation. The Cardinals are not building for a championship football team. The Cardinals are just trying to acquire. They have 2 players on their team who make more than $10 million a year. 2. They're just trying to acquire as much talent as possible. And hopefully 2 or 3 years from now, they've established that. So then we can start maybe trying to build a legitimate team that can go on a championship run, but we're not talking about.
But don't they say the counter argument? I understand what you're saying. I'm not even sure I disagree. But the obvious counter argument beyond the salary piece of it is, don't you build teams from front to
back? 100%.
So
100%.
So I mean, no offensive linemen went for a while. There were defensive linemen. There were defensive players. I mean, the question is, if the journey of 1,000 miles begins with a single step, is that first step a running back? That's really the question.
No, but if that first step is an A player and the other position that we think is more important and is a more important in when it comes to the building is a B player or a C plus player, you take the A player.
I just worry we'll see a repeat of Ashton Jensen.
That's fair. I would also add this. Last year in free agency, just to look at, if you're viewing at home, being like, of course you take Jeremiyah Love. Kenneth Walker was the Super Bowl MVP and got paid $14 million in free agency. Alec Pierce has done relatively nothing in his career and made twice as much as a wide receiver. So if you're looking at value, you take those positions, tackle, wide receiver, corner, over running back where, by the way, Isaiah Pacheco can go to the Super Bowl 2 years in a row as a seventh-round pick.
All right, coming up, we have another receiver to talk about, or at least to listen to. The Giants, their draft.
Yeah, I'll give him a B+. I mean, listen, you're getting one of the top players in Caleb Downs, a leader back there at the safety position. Not only can play the deep half of the middle of the defense, but also can possibly play the nickel. Then you go out and get Malachi Lawrence, a pass rusher, that has elite get off. And so when you look at the Dallas Cowboys, they address a couple key positions on that defense.
Yeah, I thought it was extremely good. That's a tough grade. He would have been a tough professor. Peter, what draft grade would you give the Eagles?
Maybe I'm just easy. I thought everyone in the NFC East did well. I give the Eagles an A, and it's not just because of Mekhi Lemon and Eli Stowers, who's a tight end they got in the second round. I love that they made the trade for Jonathan Grenard, who is a veteran pass rusher who could replace Jalen Phillips, who what they had the second half of last season. Howie Roseman's a madman as far as manipulating the draft board. I thought he played chess very well this weekend.
He's extraordinary, and that story of how they got him is quite remarkable. Finally, Dan, how about the New York Football Giants?
Yeah, I'm going to give the Giants I don't remember my grade.
A B.
A B, partly because I never got B's and A's when I was a student. Arvell Reese, unbelievably athletic and talented player. Francis Mauigoa, the big tackle from Miami. I love the fact that they've rebuilt this offensive line. It's probably going to be the best offensive line the Giants have had in a decade. Honestly, I wanted a receiver in the second round at 37. They get Malachi Fields in the third round. Fields the third round out of Notre Dame. So that's why it's a B, because I really thought a playmaker at 37 was something that I desired more.
Well, the Giants' playmaker was one of those who had some questions about what they did. You may have seen this, but in case you haven't, I'm going to play you what Malik Nabers said the night of the draft. Malik Nabers, who was their star receiver who got hurt early last season, he was commentating live on Micah Parsons' podcast when the Giants made their pick of Arvell Reese. So you're going to hear what Nabers said, and then you're going to hear John Harbaugh reacting to it right after that.
Don't get me wrong, I love the player, but just like, where do you play? Like, you wanna be on the outside and rush, but we just drafted somebody last year.
One thing that you'll kind of probably see as we go here, we don't get too worried about stuff. Malik wants to know how we're going to use our first round pick. I want to show him. I want to explain it to him, and the fact that he says it publicly, who cares?
That was a fascinating reaction from John Harbaugh. Malik Nabers then came back on social media and said, first off, we have to stop overreacting. I would never intentionally take away from the biggest moment or night of Arvell's life. Very excited to see him play on the team and happy that we have another dog on the squad. So, Peter, we were talking about this morning. How would you sum up this whole rigmarole?
Yeah, I think Nabers made his comments, and then Friday morning, first thing, right after that, he spoke with Harbaugh, and they had an open exchange. And then Harbaugh goes up in front of the media, and that was only a snippet of it. I think he really nipped it in the bud and basically said, I've spoken to Malik. I love Malik. His heart's in a good place. And also, let's look at the big picture here. And it was a very good, candid thing with Joe Shane standing right next to him. But I think more than anything, for Giants fans, it was, oh my gosh, there's an adult in the room who handled this already and has an open heart and is moving on. Guess who the first player to greet Arvell Reese at the facility was when he got there? Malik Nabers. They're good. They're going to be just fine. This is the Harbaugh era where we are going to be able to handle things, which could be a New York City controversy. If you know Page 6, they like to dig in on these things. And if you know the New York City media, they like to dig in on these things. Harbaugh kind of put it to bed. Nabers, Arvell Reese, they're okay. I almost feel like that's a bigger win than the Giants' haul this weekend.
Yeah, I understand that. You played in this market, so you have a sense of it here. Was that whole, we have a Giant fan on our show, John Fink, who's easily aggrieved.
Fink?
He's easily aggrieved, but he was upset by the whole Nabers.
The sun rose.
Yeah, Fink doesn't like almost anything. But he was upset about the Nabers of it all. What did you think of it?
No, I thought John Harbaugh handled it beautifully, to be honest with you. Listen, this is the era that we're in. It seems like a lot of players have podcasts and they want to voice their opinion. And so, I think John Harbaugh just gets it. He understands. I don't think nothing that Malik's Nabers said was malicious or anything like that. He asked he made a legitimate statement. And John Harbaugh, to his credit, came out in the press conference listen, I understand where he's coming from. I'm going to show him. I talked to him. It's all good. And like in this market, in this New York market, like that's what you got to do.
You see Miffy on it.
Well, great leadership is great to have, and this is great leadership by Coach Harbaugh. The only thing I would say is I hope that it's a little bit of a learning example for Malik Neighbors. You're the star wide receiver of the New York Giants in New York City. When you say something, the whole world is going to hear it. And so I'm not going to bash the young man. He's 22 years old. I love the talent Malik Neighbors is. I just hope it is a little bit of a learning experience, both publicly and privately, of saying, hey, I can appreciate what you said. Your words carry a lot of weight.
Look, this is 2026. Life has become a Mad Lib. Remember Mad Libs were just filling things? So Malik Neighbors was on Micah Parsons' podcast commenting on the Giants' first-round draft pick, Arvell Reese. All of that said, I thought the Giants had a great draft. Yeah. Absolutely great. Who was it that gave them their grade? It was.
I thought that it was. I said, first of all, I think the NFC East, a lot of the teams.
That's a great draft. Look,
I agree.
Colton Hood, people thought was going to be a first-round pick.
Can I add something on Fields?
Yeah.
You know, Barry Jackson from the Miami Herald said that the Dolphins had a really high grade on Fields, and that would have been their pick. So the Giants somehow knew that, had intel. They traded up, and a lot of people were like, they're trading up for Malachi Fields. We just watched him all these Saturdays. They traded up, and guess what? If their intel was right, another team was going to take them right afterwards.
I think that there were, look, I can't speak for teams. There were definitely people who analyzed the draft for a living who thought that Arvell Reese was the best defensive front seven player and that Francis Mauigoa was the best offensive lineman. Yeah. So they may have gotten the best defensive player and the best offensive player at 5 and 10.
Really, it's Mauigoa and Malachi Fields for me. Those are like the two people that are going to swing it. I think Arvell Reese is going to be a good player, but the Giants have had a bad offensive line for a decade. Talent-wise, this is the best offensive line they had in a long time. In Malachi Fields, a lot of people tested very well, athletic player, can go make plays down the field. If he becomes a really good, number 2 receiver, I agree.
And I know they have a lot of edge guys now who all theoretically do the same thing. But when they won the Super Bowls, didn't they have that NASCAR package where they were constantly running guys in and out of there?
Running off the edge.
I mean, if you're an offensive tackle, are you looking at the other team and thinking, oh, they've got 4 guys who can rush the passer and all? I mean, is that a good thing or a bad thing?
That's a good thing. They got you because they're all unique. Yeah. And there's nothing, as an offensive lineman, there's nothing scarier than a bunch of smaller guys lined up on you that can make you look stupid out there.
They were historically bad stopping the run last year. In the history of the Giants, the worst ever. That's going to have to improve before those pass rushers really impact the game.
All right, we have much more to do on the draft as we continue.